But first, I'm pleased to welcome Sue Mountstevens, Avon and Somerset's Police and Crime Commissioner. Hi, Sue, and welcome to Drive Time.
Good evening, Tony.
Now, first of all, how have you found the first 10 months in the job?
Pretty knackering. There is a lot of things to do. It's a very big job, and I've only got 3.5 years to do it.
Give us an idea of your budget. How big is it?
The budget for the police is 280 million. 275, between 275 and 280, and it is that I'm responsible for, and it's that where we are in a really tough place at the moment, because we've already made savings of 35 million, but we've got to find an additional 15 million now over the next 2 years, and that's very, very difficult to do.
Okay, where does that money come from, that 280 million?
It's made up of two places. One, it comes from a central grant, and then there's about 90 million that comes from the council tax precept, so local people in Bristol and Somerset.
Now, we have the Police Federation on here from time to time, and they're complaining. They're saying that actually you're cutting too many frontline police officers.
Well, I think that it is a very difficult position to be in. 85% of my budget is made up of people. Now, we have done, by having already made the savings of 35 million, we've already made a lot of savings to back office. But there's only so much back office savings you can do. And by finding this 15 million that I've got to find in the next 2 years, they're absolutely right. We are going to have to cut officers and staff unless I do something with the council tax precept.
Well, what about sort of silly basic stuff, like whether the police actually own the property they're in or whether they're renting it?
Well, we're looking at, the one thing coming from a private sector, as I have done, I have a business head on, and I'm very clear that we have to look at things to make it ourselves as efficient and effective as possible. And where it makes sense, then we've got to do the very best. But there is very little in our budget that I have not looked at now, and that taking it forward, we have an estate strategy to make sure that where we are opening new buildings, that we will be closing smaller and inefficient buildings, and in fact we will have a smaller estate by the end of the next few years.
Okay, what about antisocial behaviour? Because I know that's a big issue around, but particularly when, the whole of society is swamped with cuts. People just get angry, don't they? Sometimes they may take it out on their neighbours, sometimes it's no fault of their own, and they're just in a bad mood one day. But this can actually cause a lot of problems when when your neighbour or even someone you've never met before is in the local area. So what are you doing about antisocial behaviour?
Well, first of all, I just would like to challenge you on the antisocial behaviour, where you're saying that you have no choice. We all have choices about being in bad moods or not, and what we do with our bad mood. But as far as antisocial behaviour, this is really, having been out and met a lot of residents, it is obvious that antisocial behaviour affects their behaviour, their day in and day out of what they can do. It is a corrosive thing, this antisocial behaviour. And there are ways that we are looking at it. It's too big just for the police. It has to be looked at with the police. It has to be looked with City Council, because there are loads of issues to do with antisocial behaviour, from the fact it may be young people not having anything to do because some of the youth clubs have closed down, to the fact that some people are on high-end drugs and alcohol. So it is by working together, by getting these intervention teams, and that's one of the things that I have introduced, is by measuring not only where antisocial behaviour, where we have looked at helping people who've complained about antisocial behaviour, but also we now measure where we have actually formally resolved antisocial behaviour. So it's not just moving it around the corner, where I was often told that the police were doing that. So, antisocial behaviour moved from one street to another. We are now measuring when we've actually resolved the whole issue of antisocial behaviour in a particular area, and I think that's a really key measure now.
But you won't ever resolve it, will you?
We will. I don't know whether we will ever resolve it. I think a lot of this is to do with tolerance. One person's antisocial behaviour may be another one where kids are making a lot of noise playing in the park with football. So I do think there has to be a measure of tolerance, but I think that some of this antisocial behaviour that controls and affects many of our residents is something I think we can bring it down to a much more reasonable level.
Well, what about antisocial behaviour by the police? Because we've heard recently that there are some, every now and again, there's a police officer that finds themselves in court, and the new chief constable has said that he wants this to be made public at the time. What are your thoughts about antisocial behaviour by the police?
Well, it's criminal activity by the police, and I think that because you are in the police, and don't forget, we are talking about a very, very small number of police officers. The vast majority of our police officers are extremely dedicated, hard-working, and come to work dedicated to provide a great service for our residents. But you are right. There are a very small number of officers who have been convicted of criminal offences, and it's absolutely right that they are named. After all, there should be no different measures for people in the public who are named when they are charged, and I believe that officers, if they are charged with a criminal offence, they should also be named. You should not be protected because you're in the police service.
What about drugs? You mentioned briefly, people getting high on drugs. This is one of the things that is bound to happen when people find it difficult to get work. They are actually, we've got a lot of unemployed people when, for example, people are having their benefits cut off for what they might consider spurious reasons. The temptation, of course, is just to go round the corner to your local drug gang and say, it's okay, guys, I'll work for you.
Drugs has made a big impact, obviously, on our society, and there are many discussions about how to take this forward. But I have seen how drugs have affected family and communities, and where it is really important is that we go after the big guys, not just the guys who are doing the gardening within the farms, the cannabis farms. But I am very clear that there is a really big issue on this criminalisation of drugs.
We had Tom Lloyd, who's the former Chief Constable of Cambridgeshire, on here a couple of months ago talking about the real problem being actually prohibition of drugs, and that it's just simply the fact that they're not within some sort of legal framework. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I don't have to have thoughts about that because it is the law, and the law is decided by an elected government, and that elected government has that decision. As the Police and Crime Commission, it is very clear that I have to make sure that the police enforce the law that without fear or favour across everybody, and that is my duty.
So you're not allowed to have a view on what might be a good law or a bad law, a private view that you might share with us?
A private view would stay a private view, and I think as a Police and Crime Commissioner I should be impartial to making sure that all laws are obeyed and the police enforce that. Always remember that, and I should may have made this clear at the beginning, that I'm not operational. That is not my decision about where the force has to be used. That is definitely the Chief Constable's, and it should never be a politician or a Police and Crime Commissioner ever that decides where the police have to target.
So what about tasers? Is that an operational issue, or is that something that you would consider?
That is an operational issue. I do have a view on tasers, which I'm prepared to share. That I believe that tasers are appropriate in certain circumstances, but there has to be full training, and I would certainly prefer tasers to be used in bullets.
Well, let's have a listen now to an interview which was broadcast on 5 Live. It's a chap called Colin Farmer who was tasered. He's blind, and the police mistook his white stick for a samurai sword and thought he was going to attack them. So let's have a listen to that now.
Colin Farmer, who's blind and was shot by a taser in Chorley when police officers mistook his white cane for a samurai sword. And Colin is here with us in the studio. Afternoon, Colin. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You probably don't want to talk to me too much about that day, but tell us about...
I've had better days.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about what happened and what it felt like when you were tasered.
It was on the evening of the 12th of October, so it's nearly my stick's first birthday as a samurai sword. Before that it was a blind man's stick. On that night, a friend of mine and his wife said, there's a new pub opening in Chorley, why don't you come and join us and we can go and have a meal afterwards? And I said, are you sure you want me to be a gooseberry again? So anyway, I went. So I took a safer route to Chorley by cutting the corner and to walk down the side street, which is very narrow, and has steps leading down to the main street at the end, and the street's called Peter Street. Mm-hmm. I'm brain damaged, but blind, and it prevents my brain from acknowledging images on the left. Rather than the option of it freezing one side of my body or the other, it's left me with this strange situation where things that are on the left, like a lamppost or a police vehicle, if it's in a particular location, I just will not see it.
So if you can take us to the bit where you were hit with a taser, yes. What did it feel like to you?
It's barbaric and inhuman and a violation of your body. I was being electrocuted to death. That's what it felt like. The hemorrhage brought on a stroke, and it was so severe that I couldn't walk. I couldn't see, and I couldn't walk. That's what happened in March, and I was discharged in the May, and then tasered in it. So I'd only been out 5 months, so my brain was still trying to calm itself down from the stroke.
For you, a particularly terrifying situation to be in, was it?
I'd have been better being shot.
Gosh, well that's...
I would have known that I would live. Now, I don't know what the effect. This is the cruelty of the taser. When they called it a stun gun, it's offensive to me, because a stun gun is like, we'll stop the sheep going into this field over here and put an electric fence around it. Because, to me, it was effectively strapping something on my head and pumping me with 50,000 volts.
Well, that's a pretty harrowing story there of Colin Farmer, who was tasered up in the northwest. Sue, how do you make sure that the way that when police are spending resources on this kind of thing, that they're using them in the correct manner, if at all?
Well, I mean, that was an horrendous story. And
we've heard actually just last month that there's going to be no criminal charges over that blind man who was tasered, 63-year-old blind man, when his stick was mistaken for a samurai sword, and that's just literally last month. No charges against the officer involved.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that particular case, but it sounds horrendous, and and I certainly feel for Colin. It's as far as operational issues are concerned, again, they come under the Chief Constable. But as far as tasers, I think they are only used when there is full training. I mean, officers have to undergo very, very strenuous training in order to be able to even be allowed to carry tasers. They have to be. There is a full protocol about when they can be used, Again, this is slightly beyond my remit, but I'm happy to comment. But I think that where it is the duty of the police officer to protect the public and to protect themselves from really serious injury, then I think that's where the tasers can be used.
But that clearly wasn't the case, was it? Where we've got a blind man with his white stick. I just want to play another case, because this all came out because the use of tasers is really increasing. We've got double the use over the last 2 years. And here's another case. Martin, maybe you could chip in as well if you want to. This is a case where the person actually died. We're now, I think, up to about 8 deaths in Britain of tasers. One other thing I would say is that if anyone thinks they're going to be tasered, if you wear one of these sort of little coats which are used in fencing, the taser doesn't actually have any effect at all. So you see, there are some YouTube films out there where if you've got a fencing jacket on, the taser little thing will hit you, and it won't actually give you any kind of an electric shock at all. But anyway, this is a report which was on Channel 4 News recently with Simon Israel.
Things went wrong in Manchester in July to 23-year-old Jordan Begley. He's the 8th person to have died having been tasered by police. His mother, Dot, took me through the events. She had called the police herself after her son had rowed with a neighbour. He wasn't armed, she said, or hostile.
All I was focusing on was Jordan was stood there, the officer was stood here, the taser was shining at Jordan.
It was at that point, she says, she was ushered out of the house.
Didn't have a clue they tasered him until they actually brought. I seen the ambulance pulling up, emergency lights, running in the house sort of thing. And it was when they actually brought him out on the stretcher, and he just wasn't with it. His eyes were just flickering, and I knew then something really had happened.
Could he talk?
No, he didn't talk at all. No, I spoke to him. I told him I'd get my shoes on and come up to the hospital. I won't be long, mate, I'll be there in a minute, you know, sort of thing.
So he was still alive when he was brought out of the house?
His eyes were just flickering. I don't know if he heard me, I don't know if he was... I don't know. Do you know what? I don't know.
What the police didn't know was that Jordan had a suspected heart condition. None of the previous 7 Taser-related deaths have been officially blamed on the device. Even at this early stage, how can you be sure that his death is somehow connected to
Well, you told me he was alive before they turned up. Right, I made the phone call at 16 minutes past 8. By 8:30, that kid was dead. So you told me it wasn't the Taser that killed him.
Greater Manchester Police say he suffered a medical episode. Jordan's death is now the subject of an IPCC investigation. In fact, it's joined a long list of inquiries into the use of tasers. There have been 79 investigations in the last 3 years, with 267 complaints made to the IPCC between 2010 and 2012, but only one has resulted in any action against police officers.
Well, that was Simon Israel speaking a couple of weeks ago on Channel 4 News about tasers and the rise in their use. Now, Sue, I will put it to you again, because these are the same sort of devices which are used in abattoirs to steer cattle towards their ends, and you still think it's okay to use these devices in Avon and Somerset? You think that's okay for public money to be spent on such things?
I have to say that where it is appropriate and where police have been properly trained, and to remember they are the professionals, and I think it's really clear that, I mean, you mentioned that there have been 8 deaths, and that's 8 deaths too many, obviously, but I do not know the figures on how many times the tasers have been used. But the fact that is that we live in a democracy, and it's really clear that these cases are now being investigated by the IPCC. And in the same way, one of the things that have come out with listening to many of my residents about police marking their own homework as far as police complaints are concerned, and that's one of the things I've introduced by introducing an independent residents panel, which are now going to be looking at the way that police deal with complaints, and by I think opening up the police service, which is what I really aim to do, and by putting those reports on the website, people will be able to see that we are looking very deeply into the things that the police are doing, so that there is, it is not a closed organisation, it is open, and the whole point of having a PCC is making it as open and transparent as possible, and that's what I intend to do.
Okay, well, it sounds like a great idea, an independent residents panel, but it's almost like the word independent, you almost immediately think, well, is it going to be really independent? How is it going to be independent? How are you going to make sure it is?
Well, we opened it to the public to apply. We then went through a process, and we have between 10 and a dozen people who now belong to it, ranging from various professionals to a whole host of people. In fact, if you go on the website, you'll be able to see who makes up this independent residents panel. And within the next 3 weeks, the first report will go up about what they view, what their comments are about the complaints, particularly about incivility of police. And you will see that they are critical, and you will see that the Professional Standards Department will respond to that. But that debate will be completely open and transparent, so people will be able to see the criticism that happened and the police response.
And what about meetings of the panel? Will they be open to the public?
At the moment, we've only had our first meeting. It's taken us 3 or 4 months to do that. At the moment, they will not be open to the public because we are learning how to go through the complaints. And if I opened it to the public, I would have to take out so much of the information that was in complaints that would be personal. I think it's more important at this stage, but I'm very open to have this reviewed in a year's time. At this stage, I think more is gained by an independent, critical eye looking at the complaints and how the police respond to these complaints, and then making these reports very public.
Now, when you stood for this job last year, you were the only independent person in the local area. Do you think that's actually made any difference, you not being a member of a political party?
I think it's actually an advantage being independent, because it's very easy to communicate with all the 16 MPs that I've got, because I'm not in competition with any of them. I certainly have a very clear line to the ministers and the government, which have had to take quite a lot of comments from PCCs over England and Wales. So I think by being independent, it is really clear that residents didn't want a party political person being in this role, and I think that it is a really good way forward to keep politics out of policing. So I think it is a plus point for me as an independent to be able to not have any of my strings being pulled by Whitehall or government. It's a tough enough job being responsible for the 1.6 million residents of Avon and Somerset, and I intend to do a good job for them regardless of any party colours.
Crikey, quite a responsibility, isn't it? And what about the council tax precept? Because when I spoke to you earlier in the week, you said you wanted to talk about that. Tell us what it is.
Well, the council tax precept is usually the second line on your council tax bill, where it actually says either says police precept or PCC precept, and because I've explained, we have to find 15 million over the next 2 years, and if I have the choices of what to do with that part of the council tax precept. I can either keep it, I can freeze it. It has been frozen for the last 3 years, which means that on average, that's £168 is paid from each resident, from each household, to the police. So I could freeze it, in which case it would stay at £168. I could raise it up to 2%, which would be an extra £3.36 a year, which is the equivalent of 6p a week. Or I could go higher than that. But if I went higher than that, I would have to go to a referendum. And if I went to 10%, which would be an extra £16 a year, that would necessitate a referendum. This referendum would cost over £1 million. Now, I would have to be very careful to make sure that I was going to win, win that referendum, otherwise it would be a complete nonsense. So I'm asking the public. I've been out every weekend in the summer talking to the public. We've now got a survey online asking people what they think that I should do, and I will listen very carefully to what they think they can afford, but remembering that if I was to freeze it, it is going to put at risk 200 officers and staff.
But in a way, the police it's a progressive tax, isn't it? £180 or whatever it was, so 160 quid is a lot more to a poor household than it is to people with mansions and things. I mean, a lot of people are thinking, well, why can't the police be paid for in a better way? I realise that's not your job, but it's not really fair, is it? It's a progressive tax that we're paying for the police.
I mean, the council tax precept, as you know, is done on bands, and I was quoting a band D. Obviously, if you live in a much bigger house, then you would be paying more than that. If they could find a better way of funding the police, I'd be absolutely delighted. But this is where we are right now, and I have to, and I'm asking the local people, and I'm very clear that local people, a lot of families are very hard pressed at the moment, and there's probably no sunshine on the horizon for them.
Well, if the Treasury got their act together, I think we could probably have a little bit of money just created out of nowhere by the Treasury to give to you, which would be rather similar to the way that the private banks at the moment create money out of nowhere and give it to the asset bubble rather than to us to spend into the economy. Anyway, that's completely another story. Anyway, Sue, Marina Morris has been out on the streets to talk to the people of Bristol about our local police and what they think about you.
Are the police right to spend millions of pounds building a firearms training centre?
It sounds like an awful lot of money to me, considering the amount of cuts that I believe the police are going, and I think the money would be better served having more policemen actually on the beat, more community policing.
They don't need it. They've got existing old buildings that they can use. It is a total waste of money. They could spend that on the police officers. You know what I mean? I've seen it when it was different. All the muggings and crime and everything else, they created that. When the police were on TV many years ago, and they said, don't tackle the burglars, don't tackle the shoplifters, don't tackle the robbers, just give them the money. What all the thieves are going to do? What are all the muggers doing? Don't fight them, don't take them on, just give them their money. They gave them a licence to run riot, and that's why it's escalated the way it has. At one time, I can remember, if somebody shouted thief, everyone come out the shops, everyone jumped on them. Oh, no, don't. People just walk right past them now, they don't even look. It's all gone. The way it was is all gone. And that was people looking after people. Nobody locked their doors.
That they need to put that 60 million back into the economy to build more jobs for us. That's what they need to do. But they've always been like that, don't it?
Does that need to put it back into the economy and quit wasting money on building all these things when they're not going to be needed?
I guess it's up to them. If they believe it's necessary, then it's their money. They can do what they like. It's not really up to me to decide how the police spend their money. So if they believe that it's going to help fight crime, then yeah, go ahead.
At this time of austerity and what have you, I don't think it's necessarily the best way to spend money. I appreciate that the firearms service needs to be funded, etc., but I don't think the timing of it is particularly right for your everyday person to accept.
Should parts of the police service be privatised?
No, it's absolutely appalling idea. You only need to look at the mess, what happened with the Olympics. Just look at what's happened in the past. Learn the lessons.
It should be totally independent from the government and from the public. They are doing a service for the people without any politics in any form or manner. One undercuts somebody else and the costs end up being 3 times more. Look what's happened to all their computers and everything else. They've had to replace them. And they are for this country, for the people. That's it.
No way. I don't want to say it like that, being another form of gang already.
Definitely not as well. They're the biggest gang in the world.
Fine, that's absolutely fine. I'm not really sure how that would work, to be honest, so I'd say no, because at the end of the day we pay our taxes. We deserve to have the police there to help us. If it's privatised, then...
If it's done in a way that is sort of regulated and checked on a regular basis, then I don't have a problem with it. As long as the people are fully trained and know what they're doing, then I'm happy with that.
Is having a police a crime commissioner a good idea?
No, it's a terrible idea because it politicises the police force. I know the person that we've got as police commissioner in Bristol. I think her main claim to fame is managing to bankrupt a bakery that had run in the city for like 50, 60, 70 years, however long it was. You will get them going for headline-grabbing policies which placate the press and not the things which would actually make a difference to the people of Bristol.
The crime commissioner, you do need it because there are more criminals coming into the police force, etc., perverting the course of justice, etc., making up numbers, etc., twisting things round when they're not really real. I've actually seen the police, literally 15 of them, pulling all the people off of the buses for 10 pence that they haven't paid. They've paid part of the fare, but not all of it, or they jumped the buses, and I've seen them prosecuting them just to make the numbers up for prosecutions that they've actually had to try and outweigh the crimes. Normally, it's got nothing to do with the police. That's a transport police commissioner. As long as they don't have any political aims at all, they're totally independent. I voted for her, the woman. I see her, she had no political affiliations at all, and I voted for her, and that's why she's in. But you do need them, but they've got to be used in a proper context.
So I think it's a waste of public funds, and I'd rather it be spent on something more combating crime rather than paying somebody's fat salary.
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Someone who's certainly no fan of the police, but a big fan of you, Sue, there. Lots and lots of other issues, and particularly this business of the £16 million police firing range. I mean, are you convinced that was a good way to spend that money?
It's an extremely good way of spending the money because, one, we have to have, if with our officers using firearms, the one thing we want to do is make sure that they are trained at the very highest professional skills that they can do. And what we've actually did with that is that we'll actually be saving money because we are doing it with 3 forces going together. So rather than Avon and Somerset having their firing range, Wiltshire having their firing range, Gloucestershire having their firing range, we've actually decided that we would put all the funding together, and we would do it as have one particular place where that was going to be done, and it was going to be done at a much higher level than any of the old antiquated places that we've had. So I think it was a very efficient way of money. It was extremely sad to see it being burnt down. I went down and looked at it on several occasions on that first day, and I hope the police find out who did it.
Old Labour Oxford economist Martin Summers, got to bring you in here because we had quite an interesting chat last week, didn't we, about the possibility. I mean, it's been claimed to have been done by anarchists, but there are also all sorts of other motives possibly even foreign intelligence services or others that may have been behind this. I mean, we don't know one way or the other, but what are the potential? What is the potential for this actually not even being Bristol anarchists behind this?
Well, I think Bristol anarchists will speak for themselves, but I think in actual fact, let's get absolutely clear, absolute condemnation for this act of vandalism, which could of course have been much worse than that. Somebody might have been seriously injured. And I think I agree with Sue that if you're going to do firearms training, people need to be trained. I mean, we just had this discussion about tasers earlier. I mean, if they're not trained, then they're going to make mistakes, aren't they? So they need to be trained. The Informal Anarchist Federation claimed responsibility for this act of vandalism, and they've also done a couple of other things, supposedly. They tried to derail a train, and...
well, actually, to be fair, they set fire to signalling. I'm not sure quite exactly whether that was...
Let's put it this way.
There could have been a crash, I suppose.
Something is going on here. Let's put it clear. Let's make it as clear as that. Now, the Informal Anarchist Federation have also cropped up in Italy, supposedly... Well, they did kneecap a nuclear engineer. Now, in Italy, everybody's quite understands this situation better than they do in Britain. Sometimes intelligence services use events like this to create political effects. So I want the police to investigate this, and I want to get to the bottom of who did it. But don't presume that everything is what it appears to be, because terrorist groups in Italy, it's been proven by parliamentary investigation and by police investigation, in fact by Fernando Imposimato, who's the head of the Italian Supreme Court, that the intelligence services are basically behaving as provocateurs. So, for example, the Debenhams, the Animal Liberation Front set a firebomb in a Debenhams store, and what it looks like is it was actually a police infiltrator who placed the firebomb. Now, this goes back to the discussions of infiltration of left-wing groups by the Special Demonstration Squad, which has been coming to light. Now, I'm not presuming anything about who did or didn't do this thing, but we should be looking at all the options here, because in other parts of Europe, people are very clear that intelligence services do engage in provocational activities.
Okay, tangled web. I think we better leave it there.
Can I just say that let me be very clear that the police are doing an extremely thorough investigation. That they will have sufficient resources in order to be able to find out who did this. So although operationally it will come under the Chief Constable, I will make sure that the resources are available. That we will do as the very best that we can to find out who wrecked this building.
Now, one of the comments we heard there was the police are the biggest gang in the world, which was quite an interesting one. And a lot of people are thinking that out there. We've also got the situation where right across the country, many parts of forces, not whole forces, but bits and pieces are being privatised. Tell us what extent is Avon and Somerset already privatised, Sue?
Well, there are some areas, because we're already with a joint venture with IBM that we've looked at. We work with Somerset County Council, Taunton Deane, and the Avon and Somerset Constabulary. There is a joint venture which does a lot of our back office stuff. So, if that's what you call by privatisation, then I suspect that that's what we do. But we are looking at the moment, the Constabulary are looking at whether to outsource the detention officers. These are the people, these are the staff, they're not officers, these are staff, police staff, who look after the detainees when they're in police cells. Now, there are many police forces over England and Wales who already use such forces as this, the Serco and G4S. And I think what the Constabulary are looking at to do is to provide to me in January a preferred bidder, and I will then make a decision whether we will continue with what we've got, or that we will go to a private sector.
Well, of course, both those companies, Serco and G4S, you just mentioned, are under investigation for fraud, aren't they?
Yes,
right now, for falsifying data about whether people who'd been tagged were even still alive. They were charging the government for people who were dead and also who had been released. So good luck with that, deciding on who's the best there. But don't
forget,
what sort of pressure?
Also making sure that we have we build up the in-house bid as well. So that we will be able to make a very clear decision. So it's not as if we will be choosing either Securitas or whoever bids, because don't forget the bids haven't come in yet. So I don't know.
What sort of pressure is there on you to roll out privatisation?
It's not the fact of rolling out privatisation. It's finding the savings. I keep saying I want to protect as many frontline officers as possible, and if that means that I make changes, what happens in the back office and in the background work, then that's what I will do. Residents are very clear that they want to they want police to be visible. And if I've got to find this additional 15 million, then I have got to look at every single place where I can save money, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay, another subject you wanted to raise is female genital mutilation. Can you just first of all explain what it is?
Well, it's child abuse, and I want that to be very clear. It is not a cultural issue. It is against the law, and it does happen here in Bristol. And there are girls here who are suffering the effects of this. There may be up to 2,000 young girls who may be being cut, or may be at risk of being cut. And one of the things that I have done is making sure that this becomes very much. I want this to be discussed openly with the City Council, with education, with hospitals, with GPs, so that we can find ways of making sure that mothers and relatives within different communities know that it is against the law, and if they do take their child away to be cut in abroad, that they are committing an offence and they will be prosecuted.
But surely that offence is taking place abroad, isn't it?
Yes, it doesn't matter. It is within safeguarding. They are still committing an offence. And one of the things I have done is that we are spending some money and actually finding out how prevalent it is in Bristol, because I'm still being told by certain people in communities that FGM doesn't exist, and it was rather tragic that the first time I visited a refuge, the first person I met was a young lady who had fled from her entire family to protect her newborn baby. She had FGM when she was young, and she had been told by her family that she in fact was that they would take away this baby to cut her. So she had moved away from that city and had moved into another city, and has now been rehoused again and is now happy and safe. But what a terrible thing for that young mother, and she was only in her early 20s, to have to do that, to run away from a trusted family, trusted community, because that was the only way that she could protect her young baby.
Now, the Jimmy Savile scandals had also a very big effect. What are our local constabulary doing to make sure that accusations of child abuse are taken more seriously? Because it's quite clear that back in the days, old days, they weren't.
I think you're right. It's one of the things that residents told me very, very clearly. It's also something that survivors of rape and serious sexual assaults were telling me very clearly. And one of the things that I am rolling out with the constabulary is that to make sure that when a victim comes forward, that they know they will be believed, that they know they will be taken seriously, and they know their case will be investigated. And we are working very hard on making resources available to the police in order to take that forward. But it is an absolute priority of mine to make sure that violence against women and children is reduced. And one of the things I actually want is reporting to increase. Now, it is not. I'm not asking there to be more offences, but the numbers that we are getting, I believe, are only the tip of the iceberg. Maybe as far as rape is concerned, we may be only getting 15% of rape being reported. And I want victims of rape and serious sexual assault to feel that they will be trusted and they will be believed and they will be taken very seriously. Because I would like that reporting to go up in the same way as, and it has increased in the last few months actually. I would also like reports of domestic abuse to go up, and in fact sadly that number has dropped slightly in the last 3 months in Bristol. So if there are victims out there listening to this, then please come forward, and if you don't feel that you are comfortable enough to talk to the police, then please come forward to the many charities and organisations that are out there, because there are many people wanting to help you.
Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner Sue Mountstevens, thanks very much for joining us on Drive Time.
Thank you.
Driving home with BCfm 93.2, the station you can count on.